Hello, denizens of the internet. Your former network executive reaction to Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, the new cartoon series on Netflix. Hope you are all doing well. There might be spoilers as I'm writing this. I don't know. We'll see together. There is some controversy around this show. It seems that anything with a fan base results in controversy these days. Of course, I'm talking about the fact that the show featured Ramona Flowers mostly, and not Scott Pilgrim. And there were howls of bait and switch on the socials. Then there's the show itself. Is it good enough to overcome this squabble? My answer is a hearty yes. It's a great series that fully lives up to the subversive nature of the original books and live-action movie. Let's dispense with the controversy first. Based on an article in Variety, the two writers, Brian Lee O'Malley, the originator of Scott Pilgrim, and Ben David Grabinski, along with Netflix and whatever publicity hacks or executives in charge, all agreed to keep the fact that this was going to be Ramona's story and not Scott's a secret. Their excuse was that they wanted to keep the surprise a surprise, and that they certainly did. None of the trailers conveyed anything else but a Scott Pilgrim retelling. They were accused of bait and switch, much like what was done to He-Man and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I never saw He-Man, but fans were up in arms because the show was also horrible. And in the case of Doctor Strange, people were not expecting to see a Scarlet Witch movie, a nasty one at that, a really nasty one. In the case of Scott Pilgrim, many fans expected a more faithful version of the book, which the movie had to compress. Brian provided a great line in a CBC interview. Because Scott Pilgrim exists in pop culture, I can't really look at pop culture the same way I did when I was younger. I'm part of it. Personally, I was not disappointed that we didn't get the sine qua non anime version of the books. I have the books. I have the movie. I love them. Why the heck do I need yet another version or variation of the same thing? Frankly, Scott lives a boring slacker life. Apart from being able to beat people up, he's not very interesting. Sure, get mad at the switch, but get over it. Ultimately, all we can do is wait and see if the tactic pulled in the audience at the beginning and if the subsequent episodes kept them. If there is a massive drop-off after the first show, then you'll know Netflix blew it. But I don't think that will happen. First of all, it became a really pretty nifty mystery adventure. We all love a good mystery. Exploring Ramona's life and how she met, dated, and dumped her 7 evil exes had way more meat on the bone. Finding out more about each of the exes was great fun. The fights were awesome. The anime-style animation was fantastic. They also snuck in a hilarious homage to Sailor Moon. The entire cast from the movie came back to do the voices, which was a real buzz. Even Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who didn't cut it for me in the movie, does a super job voicing Ramona, and the animators were able to give her more expression than Winstead gave in the movie. There are so many visual Easter eggs, and I'm not even talking about the obvious reference to Edgar Wrong, who is directing the live version of the original Scott Pilgrim in the cartoon. There's lots of looping events that relate to real-life incidents. You don't need to be aware of the past material, but it's way more fun if you are. Brian and Ben David have come up with a really great, let's call it, variation on the first book. In gamer language, you could call it a DLC or downloadable content, as we call it in the industry. I could be picky about parts of the show. For instance, the first episode, which sticks very closely to the original until the surprise ending is actually the least interesting of the bunch. And you wanted a straight retelling of the original? How the mystery is solved is well done, as neither the past nor the future turns out not to be immutable. And both present-day Scott and future old Scott can change their lives. Future Ramona makes an appearance. It's one of the better time travel-y stories I've seen. In many ways, Takes Off is better than the first books. It's more assured, its characters are more fully realized, and best of all, it didn't pull a Disney. The series is about Ramona searching for her true love. A guy, a straight guy, Scott, actually. For all you people out there worried that there might not be enough same-sex action, Wallace and Todd get it on mightily in a funny but overdone sequence. And Scott, for his part, learns, well, when he comes back into the show, learns from future older Scott, wonderfully played by Will Forte, that he has a responsibility to work on the relationship all the time, because future old Scott did not. Perhaps a nod to Brian's breakup with his wife, fellow cartoonist Hope Larson. Anyway, Ramona and Scott are an item at the end, and they are in love, and they care about each other. This is something the new evil Disney would never allow. Mangas work because they make romantic relationship the center of, most of the stories, and Scott Pilgrim Takes Off follows that same path, which is why I really liked it. The ending was not ambiguous, but it still left an opening for future adventures, even though both Brian and Ben David admit to having put every bit of their creative energy into this series, and it showed. I honestly did not mind the absence of Pilgrim, and when Ramona and Scott joined up at the end for the boss fight, it made it all the more satisfying. Scott was a complete jerk in Versus the World. Here, he learned not to be quite that big a jerk, and we're all better for it. The last thing I'll say is, it's clear Scott Pilgrim Takes Off has the same voice as the original. The honesty of ideas are all there. You might disagree with Brian's choices, but you can't argue that he mailed in his effort. We have learned a bad George Lucas effort is way better than anything evil Disney has done with Star Wars, save Rogue One, which clearly was an accident. If you're a Scott Pilgrim fan, I don't think you'll be disappointed by Takes Off. In fact, I think I'll go rewatch it right now. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.